Welcome to the Main Cave, where we dive into topics to inspire confidence, develop masculinity, and foster community among guys growing their hair. Today's topic, long hair at work. Garv, what's the deal?
Well, you can have long hair, be professional, and be taken seriously. You don't have to be conventional.
We believe that here, right? Pretty wholeheartedly, I'd say. Every man here has long hair, but it's not a requirement either.
Exactly.
But what if you have long hair or you're growing long hair and your employer is telling you to cut it?
Serious topic here.
Not uncommon. We've had a lot of guys write in, ask us
Yep.
over the years. It's not uncommon at all.
First question that comes to mind is when they have to ask you to cut it, could it be for safety reasons? Do they want you to maintain a professional appearance? You got to consider these things.
So kind of unpack a little bit, figure out why are they asking you to cut it in the
Yes.
first place.
Yes.
So let's say it's for safety reasons. So that's going to be a pretty serious concern potentially for an employer.
Yes.
Once you know why they want you to cut it, then you can start addressing those proactively. So if it's safety, for example, there are some different tactics, some different styles, some tie-ups that you could use to mitigate that concern. If you're working around machinery or anything that could catch up your hair and cause a safety concern, you can braid your hair, you could tie it up, you could use a hairnet, some other, any tactics to try to mitigate that safety concern. So what about if your employer is concerned about maintaining a professional appearance? That's a pretty common one.
Yes. Thankfully, being professional doesn't have to take a lot of work. As long as you come clean and you focus on doing great work, you're presentable, you're relatable to the people that you work with. Some of the guys, the top level guys, there's something to pull beyond your appearance. Here's a good example. When you're working at retail, sometimes the conventional retail store wants you to have the short hair, but you decide to keep the long hair. Well, in my case, I always kept it clean, and because we were allowed to wear a hat, you have something to kind of cover it, put you in a position to still look clean. And if you bring your A game, and when I mention A game, it can be just good customer service, knowing your products, knowing your department. So at the end of the day, all it came down to was just having good work performance, and it all worked out. And I was still able to keep my long hair. So what about you, Chris?
I've never had an employer ask me to cut my hair or so much talk about my hair. I did work for an employer that had a grooming code and probably would have, but I was high and tight back then, so it was never really an issue. But I think even if it were in that instance, it would have been kind of a start from the bottom, from the baseline, and escalate from there. So what I mean by that is having a conversation with your employer, first and foremost. What is the actual issue?
Yes.
Is it safety? Is it professional appearance? Is it because you just don't like the hair? And then once we know what the reason is, then we can try to mitigate those things, whether it's safety or making sure that your appearance is professional, even if you do have the long hair. And if you have to continue escalating up, there's other things that you can do from that point. I have had employers mention the hair, but never in a sense of that it was inappropriate or that I should cut it necessarily. And that was when we were doing the agency work, where we'd be filming or shooting photography or whatever else for a client. But again, in that situation, we would always mitigate it in advance before it becomes an issue. We'd always have it nice and tied up in the back, have a trim around the ears and the back of the neck, and just try to make sure that it's not an issue before it becomes an issue. So that kind of brings it back around to another tactic. These are kind of some of the tactical, the practical things that you can do, but can look at it from a philosophical angle as well.
My favorite.
That's my favorite too. That it shouldn't matter how long your hair is. What matters is your work performance and what you're doing for the company and your character and who you show up as each and every day. And having that enthusiasm and having excellent job performance and doing all the things that ultimately your employer wants from you. If you can excel at those things and demonstrate that you are meeting the line, then we can shift the conversation away from hair and onto what you bring to your company that you work for. And I'll tell you what, if you have that great attitude and the contagious enthusiasm that we share here at the Longhairs, more often than not, whoever's in charge of the grooming policy, so to speak, is going to want to keep you around and give you a little bit of leeway, or not enforce the grooming codes as strictly as they would otherwise if you were just a stick in the mud.
I got a question for you. Like, what about if they're in an environment and they happen to find other long hairs that have encountered this situation? Now they could kind of build a community around that and kind of discuss pain points, or find ways to solve it together. Not necessarily create a long hair union, but you kind of could. What are your thoughts on that, man?
Certainly. I mean, there's always strength and encouragement in community.
Yes.
So if there's another long hair at the workplace, well, probably you're not going to be getting questions about your hair if there's already another long hair at the workplace. But pointing to others or asking about others certainly could play a role and give you a level of confidence and seeing that there are others out there who are letting it ride.
Oh yeah. I wanted to touch upon, so getting back into the whole philosophical point, breaking stereotypes. We all know generally on the corporate ladder, some people think, if you have the short hairdo, those are the guys who get promoted the most, or they get a lot of favoritism. I don't think it has to be that way. And we could show in our presentation a level of creativity and authenticity, getting down with, showing different hairstyles while keeping it clean.
100% in terms of promotions or advancement in any given company, there's going to be a whole range of factors that affect that. Mm. And if hair is one of them, it's going to be one and only one in a very thin slice. Mm. The things that most companies are going to be looking for is your job performance, is your initiative, all the other things that relate to your job and what you do there, more than your appearance. Now, if your appearance is shoddy or unkept, or you got frizz, hanging out everywhere, that's probably not going to go over that. That could limit your upward potential. But assuming you can mitigate any of those types of factors, then there's a whole bucket of factors that you should be focusing on in terms of trying to get a promotion or an advancement, that you shouldn't have to worry about the hair. It should be about how well you do your job.
Now here at the Longhairs, we've talked to a lot of professionals who are entrepreneurs, who've been in the workplace as a long hair. Can you remember some of the guys that we've had on our podcast?
There have been quite a few. We've had a number of email executives in the email software space.
We've even inspired a agency guy to grow his hair out.
There's Roland Oberdorfer, who submitted an excellent Halloween costume last year, incidentally. Matt Vernhoot. Then we have the executives of a pharmaceutical company who I ran into outside of Petco Park some years ago. CEO and COO of, I can't remember the name of the company immediately offhand, but the two top level executives both had the long flow tied back into the men's tail.
Sick.
Maybe less common, I think it's fair to say, but there are examples across industries of men wearing long hair in their professional field.
Even our main guy, Mark Cuban, used to have long hair too, right?
Moderately long. We graciously include him in the long hair ranks. It was close, but we're going to say he was in, certainly.
What are some of the resources that we got for our guys here that they can reference?
Yeah, one in particular. So let's say you have started up the escalation chain and you've tried to mitigate your own appearance for safety or professional appearance, and your employer is still trying to get you to cut your hair. You can always go back to the Dear Boss letter.
Oh, yeah.
This is a blog post that we published some years ago before the Great Cut in 2019. Essentially is a blog post, a letter intended to be given to your employer that explains how you are cutting your hair. You're growing your hair to cut it for the great cut. They're going to cut it to donate. And it has tones of, I know this is a company that cares about community and cares about people, and I would like to be, the front runner of carrying the torch for our company's value-based position by growing my hair out and cutting it to donate to charity as part of this big event. Now you've kind of taken the purpose of growing your hair off of yourself and you put it onto something else that is for a great cause. And that's going to be kind of your back pocket go-to to go to your employer. Of course, then you're going to have to cut it with us at the Great Cut.
Can't forget the Great Cut. Definitely got to cut it with us.
So we'll link that one up, the Dear Boss letter, but we also have a number of other posts that we've published over the years. We have Long Hair in Business, which features a number of those people, not necessarily who have been on our podcast, but who have demonstrated that you can be a professional in your area as a man with long hair. We also had a guest post some years ago, the 5 traits that entrepreneurs and long hairs have in common, another solid one.
Plenty of other hairstyles that we can provide on some of our blog posts for you to use to really whip up a lot of good stuff.
Yep, number of professional styles, tie-ups, other maintenance tips and tactics to keep your hair neat and tidy. So we've got a whole suite of resources and tactics that you could try to mitigate the long hair in the workplace problem. And of course, we have quick tips. You don't need to be a hair expert, but there are a few things that every guy with long hair needs to know. Basics like brushing, washing, tying it up, and taking care of your flow. You need it, and we got it. So sign up for quick tips. Check out some of the other content that we have to offer to mitigate the long hair in the workplace and approach your workplace with confidence wearing long hair.
All right, that does it for The Man Cave, episode 2. We'll see you back here on episode 3.
See you!